dat, Saints fans, and welcome in as your New Orleans Saints are still technically in it. Some of you will love to hear this. Some of you will be greatly upset to hear this. But either way, your New Orleans Saints still have playoff hopes, aspirations, and it's not just a fever dream. Who dat to you if you are excited for the New Orleans Saints to win and beat a division opponent and embarrass Baker Mayfield? Well, today's a good day for you. Who dat to those coming into the chat. We're going to shout to those who are here early. Greatly appreciate it. Today's going to be the post-game recap of the 23-13 win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here in Week 17. That is equally frustrating and exciting as we get ready for FTF. It is, of course, the Falcons week, as it always is when we go play them. But before we get into any of that, let's get some who dats out. John Santerre, good to see you. Swamp Water, good to see you. Lester, Saints Garcia, Joseph Feltwell, 992 Ras, Matthew Richemont, Raheem Guillon, Steve B, Nicky DeFish, Troy Jefferson, Mac Tazino, AJ Gaines, Kevin, good to see you. DJ Twigger, Julius, etc. Who dat to you? Welcome on in as we go over this game, which the Tampa Bay Buccaneers coming into this were one of the hottest teams in the league, obviously having a undefeated record in December until today, obviously, with this being New Year's Eve, and happy New Year's Eve and a happy New Year's to those listening after this podcast airs. And this was to start, honestly, and I'm not trying to hype it up. I'm not trying to make you feel some type of way, because I do understand there are a lot of Saints fans who would rather they have lost and helped their draft position, but now winning the division is still open, and technically there's still potential to win a wild card, though extremely unlikely. There is technically that potential. You look at where the New Orleans Saints are now. They have moved to 8-8, so they are back at 500 with the Atlanta Falcons, who are losing, or in fact, just actually lost. The Atlanta Falcons lost to Chicago 37-17. That falls them down to 7-9. Saints are 8-8. Bucs are 8-8. And now we are where we are. But Tampa still has the division lead. Because they own more conference wins, they're 6-5 in the conference, whereas New Orleans is 5-6. So New Orleans is going to need Tampa to lose next week if they want to continue this playoff push by winning the division. Obviously, they would need to beat the Atlanta Falcons. Let's talk about how this game started off. And depending on where you're at with the Saints, it was frustrating or it was incredible. Number one, what you saw if you watched this game was you finally saw the New Orleans Saints be consistent as a unit for most of the game. Now we'll go ahead and do my typical complaining that I felt like they went into that prevent defense mode and didn't do very well in the second half because they were more concerned with eating clock than they were scoring points. And I don't think good teams do that. But that said, you look at the first drive, they finally had an opening drive that led to a touchdown. And not only that, it was a very impressive opening drive. So if we pull out our little numbers here, and I've got it here on the screen, this is the New Orleans Saints that you're not used to seeing in terms of success, in terms of pulling off things. You know, starting off with the pass, then you had Juwan Johnson, by the way, who had a fantastic day today, but it was balanced. You had running. Kamara's first run of the game for 13 yards, you can see. Williams did struggle here and there, but he's more of a short yardage guy. Then the short passing game taking off. Williams getting a big one there, and then they just continued on until it turned into a Juwan Johnson touchdown pass. And that was fantastic if you're a Saints fan to see, right? You want to see more of that. That's similar to what we were promised early on, but that's not what we ended up getting. What you ended up getting in this game, though, was everything that the Saints should have been all season long, right? You talk about their overall numbers. You talk about how they performed. This was a game that was won by the defense and efficient offensive play. Be like that sometimes. Sam Boy says, Deuce, I just want to tell you that I appreciate the podcast. I've been rocking with you for a long time. Keep doing the thing. Appreciate you, Sam Boy. And the thing is, if the Saints could play like this consistently, they'd win a lot of football games. And I do want to be clear. I know everybody talks about how much the NFC South sucks. And I'm not going to argue that the NFC South isn't the weakest division in football. But a win is a win. And you just beat a winning team for the first time this year. Essentially, that's big. And it's a divisional opponent. And it's a divisional opponent that was streaking in the right direction. Now, Baker Mayfield's going to end his stat line with 22 for 33 for 300-plus yards, 2 TDs, 2 interceptions, which looks more impressive than Derek Carr. But honestly, Derek Carr was the better quarterback today. For those watching, you can clearly see Derek Carr was finally efficient, was reliable, and besides one throw that very well could have been an interception to Devin White, he played very efficiently. In fact, let's go through the early possessions for New Orleans. With that big 73-yarder for a touchdown, they would punt 2 times in a row after a 7-play drive after the interception stall, but they did start at the New Orleans 2. But then after that, touchdown, field goal, and then punt, field goal before having a field goal at the end of the game. So you saw consistency early on, and it really came down to the offense building a lead, and then the defense was able to be very active and frustrating early on, including getting sacks from Zach Bond and Brian Brzee, or as I like to call him, Brian Breezy. So you got what you always wanted from this team, which was a complete game, and what it took is for you to actually do what you were supposed to do coming into this game, which is you were supposed to run the ball, score, build a lead, and then let the defense win you a close one. Exactly how it played out. Now, how does this impact your playoff hopes? I know I've been a little bit all over the place in this one, but we'll do our quarter by quarter. Your New Orleans Saints still have a route to win the division. So Tampa just lost. They got to lose again. They've got to lose to the Carolina Panthers. You're really hoping the Panthers to play spoiler in Week 18. Outside of that, you need Seattle to lose out. Seattle is currently playing Pittsburgh. They are hosting Pittsburgh. You need Seattle to lose out. So Seattle needs to drop to 8-9, and New Orleans has to win out. So there are paths for playoffs, but it's going to be cutting it close. Now, here's where the Saints were after the half. I talked about how successful they looked at first half. Alvin Kamara had 10 carries for 45 yards. He would not play in the second half after having a lower leg tweak. We'll see how he looks next week. Derek Carr finished the first half 17 of 21. That's 81% for 2 TDs and 140 yards. Now, you'll notice that dropped off in the second half. And again, they got very ultra conservative with the play calling offensively in the second half, which is, for me, very frustrating to see. Do want to give kudos to Juwan Johnson, who really stepped up, had a great day today, in an opportunity for him to really kind of showcase what we thought we were getting from him this year, which has been mostly a disappointing season. And let's continue on with the first half numbers for the Saints defensively. You only had the 1 sack at that point, which was by Zach Bond, but you did have the Alontae Taylor interception, which his first of his career and a very impressive one. Saints offense coming in that first half was 6 for 9 on third down. That's 67%, and we're 1 for 1 in the red zone, while the Buccaneers only had 3 first downs the entire first half, and 2 of those were from penalty. Now, if you want to look how they compare it now, they allowed 10 first downs in the second half. And you can see that the Saints definitely slowed down a little bit, ending 8 for 18 on third downs. Again, they only completed 2 third downs on 9 more opportunities in the second half. Definitely played more conservative, went 1 for 3 in the red zone. Again, they got too conservative. This is something that I really feel like this team struggles with. It's that identity crisis where they can't be confident who they are. And again, the coaching staff, I think, is still boo-boo garbage. But a win's a win. A win is a win, Mr. Jerry. Good to see you, right? And Mr. Don, thanks for bringing up. The Giants did blow it. They had an opportunity to get a field goal to beat the LA Rams, which would have helped New Orleans, but their field goal went wide left. So for those who are playoff watching, there you go. For those who are playoff watching, there you go. Saints routes to the playoffs have gotten much, much slimmer. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. Again, there are plenty of Saints fans who still want to make that happen. If you do want the Saints to make the playoffs, like you're out there and you're like, hey, I get why people are negative, but if you do want the Saints to make the playoffs, watch the Seattle game today. You're going to need them to lose their next 2 games, and you're going to need the Saints to win next week. Regardless of what happens, no matter what, the Saints have got to win. If the Saints don't win, then none of this honestly matters. So we will talk about that during our Falcons Hate Week episode. And no matter what, no matter if this team only won 2 games all year, I want those 2 games to be against the Atlanta Falcons, so I will be celebrating. I will be celebrating. I don't know about y'all. The Panthers could beat the Bucs. It's a rivalry game, but we probably lose to ATL. Look, I said, if you remember, Francisco, I said it in the preview episode to this game that the most New Orleans thing to happen would be for them to win out and still miss the playoffs. Like they would go 9-8. Dennis Allen looks like this king of like, oh, wow, look, he has a winning record finally. Derek Carr is going to end with, I think he's got 21 touchdowns now. He's going to end the season with 23, 24 touchdowns. Everybody's like, hey, they were moving in the right direction. And we're all going to have the wool, or they're going to attempt to pull the wool over our eyes and tell us next year that they're a playoff team. But that would be the most New Orleans Saints thing to happen, and definitely moving in that direction. But I will also say if they make the playoffs, I will definitely be rooting for them to win, even though I would immediately have them as like a first round out. But I'm right there where Hunter is. And I actually made this comment on Twitter. Where was this offense? Where was this defense? Where was this conjunction of play in the first half the entire season? Right? And I liked it because they allowed Derek Carr to be aggressive. They took some plays downfield. They had some really nice runs. They did not abandon the run game. They used it as utility to force third and shorts and then converted those third and shorts. They used the tight end game, which we talked about being arguably just as good as the wide receiver group coming into this season. They actually utilized it where you had Boston Moreau, you had Taysom Hill, you had Juwan Johnson, all playing a big part. Moreau only had one catch, but it was a huge catch over the middle. First down, 13 yards. Taysom Hill with that big 22-yard touchdown pass. And then Juwan Johnson scoring on a beautiful whip route. Remember, I don't know if TJ's in the jab. I remember how much we talked about Adam Trotman looking good in that route and how it made us look forward to what he did. And yeah, it's there. Now, I will say that to Saints fans since 2008, I don't think this saves DA's job. I think DA's job was secure as secure can be. But I definitely feel like the most New Orleans thing to happen will be for them to beat the Falcons, still miss the playoffs. Now, Randall says, if we end the season on a 2-game winning streak but miss the playoffs, do you consider that a successful season? So we're getting into a little bit of the weeds of a post-game recap, but I guess I don't necessarily mind because I understand why the questions are the way that they are. It's tough for me to – I'm going to get a lot of people who are unhappy about this. It's tough for me to say that a 9-8 season is a loss. Just being honest. Would I call it a success? No, I would not call it a success. If anything, I feel like even if they become 9-8, I'm very confident in what I believe that this coaching staff, specifically the offensive coaching staff, is not good enough to push this team to the next level. I still believe that no matter what. But I cannot call a 9-8 team, if they do go 9-8, a failure. I just can't. Does that mean I'm happy with the result? Absolutely not. And it's a tricky balance, right? Like, and again, this goes into what has been a theme for the past few years for me is seeing the gray area, because it's not just straight black and white. If you're a 9-8 team, you clearly did some things right. Even if your schedule was easy, or even if you're in a bad division, you did some things right. But that doesn't mean I'm confident in what they are and who they are. Now, will I say that this is a squad that front office wise is going to hang their hat on that? Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I do. But am I happy with how the Saints have been this year? Absolutely not. I think the biggest failing is the offensive coaching, but coaching overall in general. I don't want to make it seem like I'm like giving a pass to the man, the myth, the legend that is DA. But I am saying that the biggest issue is the offensive coaching staff. To me, that's the biggest problem on this team, and that's the biggest thing that they need to fix. But even with all that said, this team still has the potential to be a winning team. And just doesn't matter what you see in this season. Like, if you're one of those people that are like, hey, this is a cakewalk schedule, they should have done that. Fine. You're more than welcome to believe this is a cakewalk schedule, and they should have definitely dominated. It doesn't matter. Front office is going to use that as a win for a win. So we'll see how it is. A winning schedule, when we look at this 10 years from now, will it still have the same, pain in it? I hate to use the word pain, but that's kind of how a lot of people feel. I don't know. I guess we'll wait and see how things play out. But I will say that no matter what, just to answer the question long-windedly, no, I will not consider this season a success at 9-8, but it's not a complete failure. And there's just no way to call it a complete failure when you have a winning record. But you can clearly see this team has a myriad of flaws. And it is certainly not a team that you can rely on. Just keep you all updated for those watching live. Pittsburgh is currently driving in Seattle. You need Seattle to lose for the New Orleans Saints to have a chance at a wild card berth, but we will keep up with that as much as we can during the show. Now, y'all hit us with some more. I feel like, and this isn't a problem, I feel like there's just a very huge divide among Saints fans on what they want to happen here, right? And I completely get it. I really do. I completely get it. you don't want the New Orleans Saints to push into what I would call long-term mediocrity. Like you don't want to just accept being 9-8 forever or even 7-10. But at the same time, there's so much of a risk of just blowing things up. So anyway, let's get back into chat. Don says we blew 3 games, 4 if you count the Lions game, which we did almost come back in. The biggest losses, obviously, the Green Bay game is huge. Losing that first one to Atlanta, huge. Saints have had some really tough losses. There are some that I was acceptable with. I was acceptable losing to the Jaguars at the time. So, and I agree, Godmo. We're not 9-8 yet. I was just simply answering a question. So, answering a question. Saints Garcia says, unfortunately, we're stuck with Allen and Carr. Look, man, I think what you saw from Carr today is basically what Carr is. And again, this goes back to like, where has this been all year? If the team that you saw today, New Orleans, played like this all year long, Carr would be completely fine. Derek Carr throwing 200 yards, 2 TDs, and being ultra efficient, especially with an offensive coordinator that just pulled the reins completely back in the second half, you'll take that all day, every day. You need a new offensive coaching staff. You've got to. And the only problem I have is I'm sure winning these games makes them believe like they still have who they want in-house, right? DA is here, and I don't believe that he's the coach that wins this team, big games in the future. I don't want to stick with him. I just understand that he's here at least one more year. But I hope that the Saints front office doesn't get confused that this success today and hopefully success next week, because it's always beat the Falcons, no matter what. It's always beat the Falcons. Hopefully that doesn't get confused for competence amongst the offense. Because I think that the players, sure, we can have continual improvements, but more needs to happen. Anyway, to give y'all some playoff scenarios in terms of what's happening, as of now, you need Seattle to lose out. So they got this game, and they play next week against the vaunted Arizona Cardinals. They're just an incredible team. So if they lose against Arizona and they lose to the Steelers today and the Saints win out, they should be your seeds, your number 7 seed. It means that you scraped into the wild card. Now, teams to watch, as in like teams that can play a role in affecting that, obviously Seattle, who we mentioned, and Green Bay game is an interesting one because technically Green Bay can kick New Orleans out as well if they beat the Bears next week and the Saints were in line for a playoff spot. That is based on the assumption that they win today. So like if the Packers win out, then the Saints also lose opportunity to win the wild card spot. You need the Packers to lose at least one game. You need Seattle to lose out, and you need the Saints to win out. And then you'll get a wild card berth if Tampa wins. Now, if Tampa loses next week and the Saints win, they win the division and they become the 4 seed. So there's your very convoluted, very complicated scoring system and tracking system of how things can end up wrapping up here in the NFC. Yeah, that was fun. But yeah, fun. Olave has been mildly disappointing to me. He has been pretty good, but he should be better. He drops a lot of balls and runs the wrong routes too often still. I do agree that he finds himself on the bad end of some route running and communication issues. I do see him being a future star. So I guess I do expect more from him because of that expectation. That expectation is also kind of on me. But yeah, I can see where you're coming from there. Is he the biggest disappointment on the offense? Definitely not. But you would expect him to do a little bit more. So the NFL, as you believe in, the team should have an 11-13 record. Across the league, the teams are playing and fighting. I think the Saints fight harder when they have adversity versus when they win. I mean, I'll say this, and I've said it about this team all year long. It is a positive for me. This team does not give up. This team has a ton of grit, and I place a lot of value on that, and I love what this team is putting together when they play like that. That doesn't mean that I am happy with everything, but I love how this team plays, and yes, Pittsburgh has taken a 7-0 lead over Seattle, but y'all are also going to want to be paying attention to that Green Bay-Minnesota game tonight. Green Bay is in Minnesota. So even if you manage to get one win, or one more win, you still need help from multiple areas to make it into the playoffs. Can we loan Taysom to the Panthers for one game? I wish. Absolutely. Now, Paul says Tampa win the division next week against the lowly Panthers. And Paul, I'll be honest, I generally agree, but I would also argue this. They were also supposed to be significantly better than New Orleans. And I will say that in December, there's no way you could have watched both of these teams and said that New Orleans was the better team in December. They just weren't. But New Orleans still won this game handily. New Orleans was clearly the dominant team in this game. They clearly had it the entire game. New Orleans was better. And that's divisional football for you. That is divisional football. Panthers got blew out today. Like, it wasn't even close. Jacksonville tore them up 26-0 in Jacksonville. But don't let that make you sleep on it. Divisional games are tough. And that's just how they've been. So, there you go. Panthers saving everything for next week. You got to hope so, right, Vlad? I mean, I'm always going to root for New Orleans to have success. I just am. Even when I disagree with who the coaching staff is, even when I disagree with some of the moves they've made, I'm always going to root for the New Orleans Saints to win. I just am. That's a flaw in me that I have called loyalty, and it's a terrible flaw. I wish I could get rid of it. It's very annoying when you constantly have to watch this team week in and week out be consistently inconsistent. But the team that you got today is a winning ball club. Very curious to see what happens next week because you can't sleep on Atlanta. Atlanta lost a tough one today. All right, Atlanta lost to Chicago 37-17. That's a huge blow, and that obviously drops them to 7-8, or I'm sorry, 7-9. They're not going to make the playoffs now, right? So if you're Atlanta, you're feeling some type of way, right? Like you're feeling technically. I hate to say this, technically, Atlanta's not eliminated. Hear me out for those wondering how that math works. Technically, if the Falcons beat the Saints next week and Carolina beats Tampa, the Atlanta Falcons would actually be your divisional leader because of conference wins. Yep. So technically, Atlanta could win the division at 8-9. Yay, NFC South. All right, Charles says 23 for 23. Thank you so much, Charles, for supporting the channel. Great defensive performance. Love the efficiency from the offense and bleeding time possession. Blessing in disguise that we held out Kendra Miller for this game. ATL spanked Alante Taylor with a pick. Oh, ATL got spanked Alante Taylor with a pick. Who dat? God bless. We did love that. We did love that. And yeah, there you go. There's just some crazy, crazy numbers that technically the NFC South is so bad. Atlanta's not eliminated, even though they lost 37-17. If they beat the New Orleans Saints next week and Tampa loses, Atlanta sneaks in and becomes your division leader. What a time to be alive. And just remember that these division leaders, well, they host a playoff game because that's just how we do it here in the NFL. Doesn't matter what your record is. If you win a division, you're hosting a playoff game. Giovanni says, is MT coming back? The word on the street is to not expect MT nor Marshawn Lattimore back this year. If they were to be back, it would probably be during the playoffs if the New Orleans Saints manage to sneak into the playoffs. So short answer is very unlikely that you see them because the percentage chance of New Orleans making the playoffs is stupid low, but it is still a possibility. It is still a possibility. I know. DA saved his job. Again, Saints fan. DA's job has never been in jeopardy. I don't know why people even thought this. We try to tell fans all year long. DA's job was not in jeopardy today. DA's job is not even warm. His seat doesn't have even a lighter underneath it. It's not. Pete Carmichael's job? Yes, sure. But Pete, he's been a problem. And they've looked at replacing him. But DA literally could have lost 60-0 this game. And they would not have had him on the hot seat. Year 3 is when DA would be on the hot seat, just like we said when we signed him. He would have to do 4-13 seasons for him to get fired. So, D says, can we all agree that Mickey Loomis' method of kicking the can down the road is hurting us? Nope, absolutely not. There's one thing that the Saints aren't hurting themselves with is how they handle the finances. That is not something I will ever agree on. That is completely fine. The Saints are fine. That's not a big deal. Now, are they hurting themselves with some of their coaching choices and player acquisition choices? Absolutely. The way they handle finances is not a problem. In fact, a lot of teams around the league copy them. So, no, I have no problem with that. I won't agree with that one particular point. I will agree with other points, but not on that one. Not on that one. Fullback dive on 37 is kind of elite. All right, you be quiet, TJ. You be quiet. And we are not going to speak any positives about Pete Carmichael, because Pete Carmichael was also, hey, let's go captain conservatism in the second half, even though this offense has not shown the life that we saw in the first half all year. Let's go ahead and shut that down, go as conservative as possible. That's just, you're not going to convince me that Pete Carmichael is the right man for the New Orleans Saints job. Ronald Curry, if nothing else, should be the guy calling those plays. If nothing else, Ronald Curry should have that job. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Your New Orleans Saints had a great day today. This is, shockingly, by the way, Alvin Kamara's first game in, I'm going to have to pull it up, since the beginning of the year that he didn't have at least 100 yards from scrimmage. So Alvin Kamara ends the day. Last week against Carolina, he only had 45. But he has had 100-plus yards from scrimmage 6 times this season. And if you count New England, where he had 97, today he's going to end with 47, not playing in the second half. But he has been extremely dominant this year. Juwan Johnson, love how he stood up. Juwan Johnson is the guy that's been, to me, the biggest offensive disappointment of the season was Juwan Johnson. And he came in today and did a great job, got him a touchdown. He's now over 300 yards receiving. Still not impressive, but still, I'll take it. Win is a win. Win is a win. Pete Carmichael just needs an O-line. They've already got an O-line. That's not a problem. Pete Carmichael can't call plays for crap. He's terrible at situational football. And, yeah, no on the Pete Carmichael. Just feel like we need to start hitting on all the rookies like 2017. Too many players, not enough difference makers. We have plenty of good players, Deesh. Again, I think, and this is just my opinion, the players are not the issue. The talent on the coaching staff is the issue. The talent on the coaching staff is the issue. I don't think they have a deficiency of talent at player. I think they have a talent deficiency at coach. That is where New Orleans is struggling. Coaching. I don't think they're struggling when it comes to how they are performing, specifically how they're performing as a team. I think the team is there. I think the locker room is there. I think the coaching staff, offensively specifically, is awful, and I would replace DA if I could go back in time. So, need more of that aggressive play? Yeah, look, I'll give Pete Carmichael credit on the 1 3rd and 7 where he ran a tight or fullback draw play. Sure, but I'm not going to excuse the fact that this man went ultra conservative in the second half and literally started costing them games. No. I'm not going to give him any credit for that. I'm just not. We're not going to run up the gut with Jamal Williams and do an incomplete pass with Taysom and then have that 7-yarder and me go, okay, give him love. No, we're not about to do that. We're not about to give ultra conservative a hand clap because a player decided to do really well. So, I agree it's the coaching, but we still can use a little more their positions. Definitely that the talent for New Orleans is not infallible. I'm just saying that this roster is a winning football team. Coaching staff is not. Does he get credit for coaching the 9th-ranked scoring offense? No, he does not, TJ, because a lot of New Orleans scoring, especially as of late, has been against boo-boo garbage teams, especially in second half scoring situations. Pete Carmichael gets no credit. Pete Carmichael needs to rot in football hell. Now, he can go do whatever he wants, and I hope as a person he has nothing but happiness and success. But he can go rot in football hell. FYI, since we're talking about that, did you know that the New Orleans Saints, 9 rushing touchdowns, fourth quarter, 4 passing touchdowns, fourth quarter. In fact, of the New Orleans Saints passing TDs, most of them come in the second half, as do their rushing TDs. So here's the thing with New Orleans. I'm not going to give Pete Carmichael credit for garbage time because that's what a lot of his scoring has been this year. This game was different, and I love that. But a lot of his scoring has been garbage scoring, and I'm not going to give him credit for garbage scoring. It's not. I'm not going to give Pete Carmichael credit for garbage. I'm going to give a new offensive coordinator a better unit and watch them perform better. So, I'm going to watch them perform better and not be shocked because a decent coordinator can use his team significantly better. Carmichael's just not it. Just not it at all. Mike Martz next, Saints OC. Wow, you brought a name out the bag from a long time ago. Long time ago. Don says, I hate when we get ultra conservative. You should continue scoring points so the game is completely in hand. 100% agree. Never going to find me rooting for them to play it safe. Also, for those watching, Seattle has tied it up with Pittsburgh 7-7. So if you are playoff watching, something to keep in mind. So something to keep in mind. All right. Can you do any suggestions for O-line coaches? I mean, I can say that Doug Marrone's clearly not it. The Saints have actually had really good offensive line coaching over the past 2 decades. I'm trying to think if I can think of anybody that's actually available now that could do that. Because, hell, I honestly think Brendan Nugent was probably better than what Doug Marrone has been this year. Brett Ingles, I think, was solid, not great. Frank Smith, who obviously is coaching in the league now, was pretty solid. Aaron Cromer was really good, but that's going way back to like the 2009 Saints team, 2011 Saints team. But Aaron Cromer was really good. I don't know what Aaron Cromer's up to these days, but that was also, he was good a decade ago. Yeah. Yeah. Pete's either the number one scoring offense or you ain't it. No, Pete either be decent. TJ, I don't even know why you're waving this flag as if anybody in any analytics, and including yourself, have ever supported Pete Carmichael being decent. I feel like you're doing this just because you enjoy riling things up. Nobody who studies the game has Pete Carmichael as anywhere near the top doing anything. His situational play calling is abysmal. His game splits are abysmal. And just because he has overall numbers does not say anything. This is why context is so important. Context is so important. Nobody looks at Pete Carmichael and says he's good. Not a single person has said Pete Carmichael is good all year long on a national level, on a reporter level, here regionally. Nobody has. Every analytics nerd in football who has nothing to do with the Saints talk about how terrible Pete Carmichael is as a play caller. We're not about to pretend and get disillusioned by him having the numbers and yards he puts out, especially when 12 of those touchdowns we talked about coming in today were all in the second half, 9 of them being in the fourth quarter. We're not about to give him garbage stats. We're not about to give him garbage stats. He is a great example of a good team and good players masking inefficiencies at your coaching position because the numbers look decent. You haven't heard one person not affiliated with New Orleans talk about Carmichael, then you don't listen. Marcus Spears trash talked him halfway through the season as like one of the worst OCs in the league. So, Randall says that's on Loomis for begging Pete to stay. I mean, I don't care who we want to blame for it. I don't care who gets the blame. DA's to blame for it because I don't think anybody wants to come coach New Orleans because DA's here. I think there's plenty of blame to go around. But the point is, Carmichael sucks. So, Carmichael sucks. And every form, and like to TJ, who is just playing contrarian, says you pay attention to national media now. If there's one voice saying something, you ignore it. But when the collective whole, when literal national media, local media, the whole analytics world of football says a guy sucks, guess what? He sucks. It's not about just cherry picking what one person said. It's when the whole group looks at you and says, you're the weakest in the class. Guess what? You're the weakest in the class. And that's not changed by the fact that the New Orleans Saints have decent numbers when it comes to overall yardage. It doesn't get to just change. When literally everybody says you suck, guess what? You suck. It's like everybody universally agrees that the NFC South is the weakest division. But if you go by records, the NFC South is not the weakest division. Truly, if you go by records, the NFC South is not the weakest division. So what do you go by? Do you go by record or do you listen to what the people who study the game collectively say? Because if you go by record, the worst team is probably the North. What do you go by when you do that? Or you argue the AFC East is worse because Buffalo is mid at best right now with how they've been playing. You've got Miami, and then you got the horrible Jets and the horrible Patriots. But yet I would still say that the NFC South as a collective is worse. And as would everybody else. You hope he's trolling. I don't know. You gotta let TJ do his thing, man. I think TJ really enjoys drama. TJ really enjoys drama. So, yeah. Watching the games, we can all see that Carmichael isn't good. I don't care about the numbers. The numbers are hollow because they feel much worse. Again, so much of it is like splits, right? When are those numbers coming? It's like coming into this game, the Saints offense was ranked 14th in yards and 13th in points, right? That's not incredibly impressive, but on paper it looks solid. But the key is, when did those points come? And again, that went back to the offensive splits that I rattled off. The fact that coming into this game, well over half of your scoring has come in the second half, particularly in the fourth quarter. I mean, that means a lot, right? That says a heck of a lot about you as a team. The fact that they don't have a single rushing touchdown in the first quarter in the entire season. It's just, again, I'm not going to give hollow rewards out because those numbers can be misleading, because we are talking about a team with Alvin Kamara, who's guaranteed to give you 1,000+ yards a season. Chris Olave, who's basically guaranteed, even playing at a, in my opinion, lower level than he should, 1,000 yards. I mean, you're going to get numbers, but are you getting wins in efficiency? You're definitely not getting that with TJ. So Nolan Carter says, I'm late to the stream, but just woke up. I'm pissed we won. I wanted a better draft pick. Sorry, guys. It's okay, Nolan. You're allowed to have your opinion. If PC is fired, when after the end of the season? I mean, it would have to be after the end of the season. And it would probably be before the new league year. So relatively quickly. So, yeah. Well, look at the Saints offense was ranked 14th. I say now it's all garbage yards. I won't even say garbage yards, but I will say that context is king. And it's something that we always try to push here on the show. How did you get those things? How did you get those stats? It goes the same thing with like sacks. Sacks a lot of times are a quarterback stat, not an offensive line stat, but it can be an offensive line stat if the pressure rates match what the sack rates are. It's all about having context and correlating that together as a group instead of, just cherry picking one thing. And if you cherry pick one thing, Pete Carmichael is one of the greatest offensive coordinators to ever call plays, just based on numbers alone. But anybody that studied him would not say that. It is what it is. What moves are you making in the draft free agency? Deej will handle that when the season's actually over. Season's not over. We got Falcons Hate Week this week and potential playoffs. When we are officially eliminated from playoff contention, we will talk off season in more depth. You work midnights? Hey, make that money. Make that late night money. Love it. Make that late night money. I love it. Breeze OC would be so fun to see. See me, JH? I wouldn't. Just because I don't know. Man's got no playoff and coaching experience. Let him coach somewhere first. We'll just give him the reins. But I mean, yeah. Giants almost got the Saints in the playoffs today. No, it would have helped. The Rams would have had to lose out. Now that the Rams have won, it doesn't matter. They're not going to help the Saints. The Giants could have helped the Saints, though. Just wasn't enough. Wasn't enough. I don't believe last week were garbage yards because the Saints were one stop with 4 minutes to go from possessing the ball with a chance to tie. So, I mean, I guess what is your point? Is your argument that Pete Carmichael actually is good, but he's only good in, against bad teams in December? Are we arguing that Pete Carmichael is good? Because I don't think contextually that is provable. I think it's actually very easy to dismiss. But that would be probably something we just put a whole episode towards and just did that. Maybe we can do that Tuesday if y'all really are that bored. But we're going to do Falcons Hate Week on Thursday no matter what, because it's always FTF. Always FTF. Can't be mad at Breeze if he does bad at OC. Every Saints fan love Breeze. I absolutely can, because I can love you as a player and not give an absolute twiddle about you as a coach. Great example. Danny Abramowitz, the first wide receiver in New Orleans to ever get an All-Pro award, arguably the greatest Saints receiver for the first 20, 30 years of the franchise. Abysmal offensive coordinator. Absolutely awful. It was terrible as an OC. It was garbage. But he's one of the greatest Saints of all time. Drew Brees could be the same thing. I don't know. I just would rather not roll the dice on that. I'd rather go after, like I said, somebody like Kubiak and fill that role. So, can't compare those two? Absolutely can. Absolutely can compare those two. So, if you disagree, it means you love drama. I mean, TJ, look, man, I don't know what you want us to say. You do love drama. You are a known stirrer of drama, and that's fine. It's just part of who you are. Nobody's going to agree with you that Pete Carmichael's good, because he's not. He's nowhere near good. He is at the bottom part of the league. You can argue that he's not the worst OC, but he's still bottom 4. So, and if your argument is, I didn't say he was good, well, then you're just proving the point that you're arguing for the sake of arguing, which again is you being looking for drama. Well, one of the greatest offensive tacticians and wide receiver, I don't see it. Sorry, JH, then I'm sorry. It's just playing is not the same as coaching. It is nowhere near the same. It's nowhere near the same. So the argument is he's not one of the worst. Well, everybody disagrees with you, and if you want to have that opinion, cool. Everybody analytically and film-wise disagrees with you. I think they bring Pete Carmichael back if they win against the Falcons. I think Pete's probably coming back no matter what. I just don't think he should. I don't think that New Orleans has any options. I don't think anybody wants to come here. So I would rather just hand the everybody equal marks. No, it isn't, TJ. We've gone over this. TJ, I'm not going to discuss this with you anymore. Because, again, you're just proving drama. Because you're literally here on the episodes where we go through, hey, look at all the analytics crowd talking about how terrible Pete is. You've been here. You know it. You just want drama. Stop. Are they really going to bring Pete back? Again, who wants to coach for New Orleans? Nobody. Nobody wants to come to New Orleans under DA. So I think their only chance is Ronald Curry. The only chance is Ronald Curry. And there's no guarantee that he's better. He's just different. There's no guarantee he's better. He's just different. So we'll see what happens. We'll see. But do I foresee a change? I don't. I think the Saints are going to stick with everything and run it right back again next year and probably have 7 wins. Maybe even as low as 5 to 6 wins. But we'll see. We'll see. I think if they make some level of change at coaching, there is potential for this team to be better. There really is. There's potential for this team to be better. Also, we have gone 45 minutes, which for a game recap is kind of long. So we're going to wrap it up. We will be back Tuesday. We got some film study to do, and we will cover what will be, in my opinion, one of the best weeks of the year because it's always the Falcons. Always is. So who dat? God bless. Appreciate every single one of you. Have a good one. See you on Tuesday, and enjoy a winning New Orleans Saints